Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of QnA, the show where I take your questions from YouTube and Twitter and answer them here in video format. A lot to get into, a lot of interesting questions that people have before this Thursday night football game. It's approaching upon us very quickly, so let's just quickly get upon these questions. First question comes from Tosh, who says, what do you believe is Baker Mayfield's ceiling for his career? Will he ever become elite? I would say, because this is the case for most quarterbacks, it is unlikely that Baker Mayfield is going to become elite. Would we all want him to become elite? Yes. But does Baker Mayfield have to become elite? No. I think that's what gets lost in this conversation of quarterback play and what exactly do you need from your quarterback position, and when should you decide to upgrade from your quarterback position, right? When is it becoming a hindrance to you winning? That's really the question you have to ask yourself about your quarterback. Not necessarily, is my quarterback the best? Is he top five? Because top five quarterbacks don't necessarily win the Super Bowl every year. You can look at somebody like Tom Brady, where the 2 years where Tom Brady was undoubtedly the best quarterback in NFL, and I believe he won the MVP one of those years, was 2007 and 2012, and he lost both of those Super Bowls to Eli Manning, somebody who has never really been in the Super Bowl elite quarterback conversation. So when we ask ourselves these questions about if Baker Mayfield's ceiling is where and if he can become elite, I don't think that's really as useful or as relevant as asking yourself, is this a quarterback that you can win with? Is this a guy who can make a play or two when you need it? And Baker showed that last year that he can do that. Now, this year, he's not looking great right now, but I still think that the tape that we saw from last year is something that he could reproduce in this year. Also, another thing that you have to consider is generally people go to one extreme or another with a quarterback like this, where they're like, hey, if he's not the best quarterback or the top five quarterback in the NFL, then you can't win a Super Bowl with him. Or if he's a guy that you can win a Super Bowl with, everything has to be perfect around him. I can't stress enough how much I hate that saying, because no quarterback in the history of the NFL who has won a Super Bowl has had anything perfect around him. You can look at Trent Dilfer's situation when he won the Super Bowl. It wasn't a perfect offense around him. He had a good team. He had a good defense. Same thing with Eli Manning, right? Eli Manning once won the Super Bowl as a fifth seed in the NFL, like the lowest seed you can get. And it wasn't on a great team, but they were executing well and they played well. That's more important, right? No, everything doesn't need to be perfect around him. No, you don't have to have the highest salary cap number in sports in order to support a quarterback like Baker Mayfield. You can get by with a dude like Baker Mayfield. Baker is in that Eli Manning to Ben Roethlisberger range of quarterbacks where they're franchise guys. They're going to be there for a while. The team's going to be willing to give them money, but they're not necessarily going to be in the MVP conversation every year, and I think that's fine. That's where I see Baker Mayfield kind of existing throughout his NFL career, and let's be honest, that's kind of exactly where Bernie Kosar existed his entire NFL career. Next question comes from Brad Miller, who says, if the Browns lose to the Broncos on Thursday Night Football, is it time to get seriously worried about the future of this season? What needs to be focused on to beat the Broncos? Yeah, if the Browns lose on Thursday Night Football, it'll be their first loss against a bad team. And it will be something to be concerned about, right? You're going to go into that 10-day break under 500, and you're in a division where everybody's at least 500. So, yeah, it would be something to be concerned about. Your back would most certainly be up against a wall. I mean, you would pretty much have to go through the rest of the season, and maybe you can afford to lose 2 games after that. So, yeah, you kind of don't want to lose a winnable game here against a team that you're definitely capable of beating just because, you don't really have that many more losses to spare throughout the rest of the season if you want to make the playoffs. So, yeah, most definitely, if they want to continue to be on the track that they want to be at, they got to win this game. Next question comes from Beep Beep Out of the Way, who says, what does the defense need to do to get back on track? Is it a Malcolm Smith thing? It could be. I think it's bigger than just one player. I think there is a whole reconfiguration of where players play at in certain defenses and where you can put certain players. I think there are a bevy of adjustments that, quite frankly, need to be made. Something needs to be figured out with that back end. Does John Johnson need to play so much in the free safety role? Or, would it be better for John Johnson if he played closer to the line of scrimmage? If that's the case, who's going to shift in where? Are you going to put Grant out there? Are you going to put Ronnie Harrison out there? What can you do to put some of these players who haven't been thriving, Troy Hill included, in the best position for themselves to succeed, while also not creating a defense that's so complicated that, these blown coverages continue to happen? That's a tough question. But those are the tough questions that the Browns coaching staff are paid to hire. I mean, not paid to hire, but paid to answer. So that's really going to be a lot of things for this defense to figure out. And they don't really have that much time here to figure it all out. So, hopefully they do. The next question comes from Matt Fure, who says, why is our safety room so ineffective? What needs to change to get them to perform to their potential? Similar to the last question here, but it comes down to communications and knowing where each other's going to be. There are too many plays here where I'm looking at John Johnson and I'm looking at Ronnie Harrison, and I have no idea why one would do that if the other was doing that. And that tells me that they're both operating on different pages here, right? Why is Ronnie going under and so is John? That doesn't make much sense, right? Either they're both kind of just going cowboy with it and throwing the play call to the wind and just doing what they feel like, or they're both misunderstanding where each other should be on certain coverages, which is leading to a ton of blown coverages. Either way, that needs to be figured out. If the answer is that those two players can't play free and strong next to each other, then that's the answer. And somebody needs to take a lesser role or make an adjusted role of themselves. So, the safety room, there is something there when it comes to communication. I don't think it's only the players. I think it has something to do with Joe Woods and how he's divvying up these coverages. But you shouldn't see this many blown coverages and forgotten wide receivers when a team plays quarters as much as the Cleveland Browns. That's all I can really definitively tell you. So it's definitely a issue that needs to be fixed, and it's between all of those guys in the room, coaches included, to the highest level. Next question comes from Robo King, who says, here's my question. What is the real problem with our secondary? Is it Joe Woods? Is it all just miscommunication? Or is it guys like Troy, John, Ronnie aren't good enough or not playing in the right position? No matter what, it needs to be fixed soon. Well, I mean, we know that Troy Hill's good. We know that John Johnson's good. And we know that Ronnie Harrison is good because they've played good football in the NFL before, right? So if those three things are true, and it's not like, well, Troy Hill has been getting beat a little bit, right? I think he's a little bit out of position here and they need to make adjustment here. But it's not like these dudes have been getting beat because they're just getting outplayed. They're getting beat because they're not anywhere near the play. And it's not like they're being shaken. It's not like they're being schemed that way from a offensive point, right? It's not like the offensive coordinators are just like drawing up magic in front of them. It's because they're just, for whatever reason, incapable of being in the right spot or at the right time, which has led to a drastic lack of plays being made, a drastic uptick in blown coverages and big plays being made on this secondary. So, I can sit here and say it's just miscommunication. It might be a structural issue with the defense. Either way, they need to find a way to mitigate it. And I think the only way you can mitigate it at this point is to simplify it, right? Just simplify it. Put Grant there, put Ronnie there, put whoever you want to put there, but limit their responsibilities, limit the choices they have to make, because obviously the complex stuff that they're trying to do back there, it's just not working, and it's too late in the season to give it a chance to continue to work itself out, because it's just costing you games at this point. The next question comes from Tommy, who says, with the injury situation looking the way it does and the amount of losses we've already given, we haven't played any division rivals, and in the way that we're losing games, is it too early to talk about the season being lost? How the hell have you not played a division game and you're talking about the season being lost? That's my question, right? Like, if you ain't played no division games, the season's still alive, because the division is still ultimately alive, right? If the Browns were 3-3 with 3 losses to the division, yeah, this would be a much more drastic and dire situation the Cleveland Browns in. But the fact that you haven't played any division games is a good thing, because you're, quite frankly, you haven't been ready to play division games in the first 6 weeks of this season. So now you have an opportunity to turn it around. You win those division games, everything's going to turn around. So no, the division, the game, the year is nowhere near being lost. I mean, come on, the Browns, even when they were bad, weren't even close to the season being over in October. Let's not be ridiculous here or overreact just because the team's 3-3 and they had a bad performance on last Sunday. But that doesn't mean that the season is anywhere near being lost. Next question comes from Matt Trunk, who says, with Chubb, Hunt, and Baker all being injured or not close to 100%, our 2 best wide receivers being out, what does our offense do? And what do you game plan against what will be a good Denver Broncos defense? I mean, are they a good defense? I'm just asking that, right? Because we saw the Steelers come to life against this defense, and we know that the Steelers offense isn't really that good. So the real question is, what are you going to do against them? You're going to play your game. You're going to want to run the ball. I don't care who you have back there. No Chubb, no Hunt. All right, then you're going to have Demetric Felton and Dearness Johnson. You kept those guys on your roster for a reason. Put them out there. And yeah, you don't have your 2 best receivers, but you still got guys like Donovan Peoples-Jones. You still got Rashard Higgins. You still got all your tight ends here. And, Baker's more than likely going to play, considering that he came back from that injury and played, and he didn't really look bad when he came out there. So, yeah, I mean, you're just going to have to attack this Broncos defense. They're not a dominant defense. I mean, they let Pittsburgh look good against them. This is not the greatest defense in the world that you're playing. They put up good numbers against bad teams early in the season, but look what everybody else who has been decent has done to that team. So no, this isn't a daunting defensive team that you're playing. You need to just go in there and play your game and dominate the line of scrimmage. And for once in the season, just execute. If you just execute at a more than marginal level as a team, offensively and defensively, and we're not sitting here talking about penalties, blown coverages, and mistakes on both sides of the ball, you'll win the game. That's really the truth of it. The next question comes from Smoking Barrel, who says, is this mini bye week enough time for Kevin and the rest of the coaches to address the glaring issues we keep seeing? Choices and strategies on both sides of the ball have been suspect. I mean, it's the time that they have, right? They have 10 days, 14 days to figure it out. And if you don't figure it out, then you're going to have a rough couple of weeks after that. But if you do, you do. And look, things don't have to be 100% figured out, but this is time to decide if you're going to simplify things. This is time to decide if you're going to change how you line up defensively. This is time to decide those things. These aren't going to be massive adjustments, right? You're not going to fire anybody or rehire anybody, but in this time, you can make some small changes that can make some huge differences. So that's really what the goal is there. Next question comes from Aaron Matthews, and this is the last question of the day, who says, is it time to start questioning Joe Woods like we haven't already? The run defense is very solid, but our secondary is weak, and he was a defensive back coach. Not saying fire him, but we should hold him more accountable for not correcting the issues in his specialty. Is Joe Woods are people like letting Joe Woods slide? People been wanting Joe Woods fired every time there's a big play here. I mean, Joe Woods should be held accountable, obviously, and I think he does, to the point to where he might be held overly accountable, because some of these things are clearly player issues that Joe Woods ain't got nothing not nothing, but it ain't really Joe Woods' fault that dudes are going rogue on his defense at times. But, Yeah, Joe Woods should be held accountable, but you know who else should be held accountable? Literally everybody else on the defensive side of the ball, especially the safeties, right? Those guys are about as responsible for the bad play as Joe Woods is. Joe Woods isn't just putting them out there to be in bad positions. Sometimes they're putting themselves in terrible positions. The honest to God truth about the Cleveland Browns team right now, no matter what side of the ball that you're talking about, offensively or defensively, is they are their own worst enemy. They do this on the offensive side of the ball with penalties on the offensive line. Like, that's their number one thing. They get penalties on the offensive line, or the offensive line just stinks at certain points of the time with the edge play that they're getting different in their tackles. So that's the offense's biggest problem when it comes to them getting in their own. Defense's biggest problem right now is that whatever they're being asked to execute, they're not executing at all. And I don't know if that's because they have a disagreement with what they're asked to execute, or is that because they're just not executing for whatever reason. But that's the issue, and that's on coaching, and that's on players. Everybody has a job out there, and their job is to execute whatever the game plan is. And I have not seen, maybe since the Vikings game, clean execution from the Browns defense, and that's the biggest problem, right? Because when they actually execute what they're supposed to be doing, they look pretty good, right? They did that against Chicago, and they did that against the Vikings. So it's about execution, and that's about the players on the field more so than it's about the coaching. Not saying that the coaching doesn't have any responsibility, and it's obviously he does. I have talked almost this whole video about where Joe Woods' responsibilities and failings have been with this team, but also the players need to be held accountable for how awful they're executing, and that's on both sides of the ball. The offensive line execution has been awful in the red zone all year. The running game execution has been awful in the red zone all year. And the passing game execution, awful in the red zone all year. To the point to where going on it for 4th and 2, that's something that used to be automatic, but now they're not executing at a competent level. They can't even get 2 yards on a 4th down, to the point to where we're upset that we're going on it on a 4th and 2, when that's what you honestly should do if you're executing at a adequate level as an offense. The same thing goes with the defense, right? They're doing things that you should be able to do with the personnel that you have, but the personnel ain't executing. So all of this stuff is just out of whack. So honest to goodness, it's really all about execution for this team. That's what they need to focus on. But that's it for this week's Q&A. Again, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.